Hello again, Fairhaven Town Administrator Keith Hickey with the latest edition of This Week in Fairhaven for the week ending April 17th, 2026. Hope everybody's out there enjoying the nice weather finally. And when we talk about nice weather, what comes with some nice weather is our annual town meeting, which is coming up on May 2nd, on Saturday, May 2nd, at the Hastings Middle School. Select Board and the school committee have met. They met at a tri-board meeting with the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago, and the school committee and the select board have voted to support the override that's been proposed in the amount of just over $760,000. That override proposes funding for a half a dozen town departments: the police, the fire department, animal control, meaning the animal shelter, our tourism department that has been proposed to be eliminated completely, as well as proposing an override to the school department to provide the necessary funding to allow the school department to operate for the fiscal 27 budget year without the concern about not meeting net school spending. And to help discuss some of the topics that we're going to be debating at our town meeting is our school superintendent, who's been so kind to join me today, Kohler. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
What Superintendent Kohler and I thought might be worthwhile is just having a brief conversation about the importance of the override, what it does to assist the school department moving forward, to try to answer some questions for people who may have some questions at town meeting, or if it does pass town meeting, at the ballot at the town election in June. So override includes an amount of just over $481,000 to supplement the operating school budget that's in the operating budget, Article 8. And that money will be used to provide the school department the ability to properly fund the fiscal 27 schools. And maybe you can talk,
Sure.
Tara, about what you'd be looking to utilize those funds for and why it's so important.
So when talking about the school budget and net school spending, we've been asked to compare where we fall compared to the state. And for FY24, which is the most recent accurate depiction of net school spending, the state average was 27% above net school spending. We were at 2.4% above net school spending, which is really too close for comfort. I know people have been calling it different words, a buffer, whatever, but the point is that when you're that close, there's a potential to fall short. Most districts spend in excess of net school spending. We are in the bottom 35 districts in the Commonwealth. So you're looking at about 300 districts. And of those school districts, we fall in the bottom third. And I'd like to just say that I believe strongly that we outperform where we look on that chart. So I would ask people to look beyond that and look at the accomplishments that we have to offer. So as many of you know, we did have to reduce our staffing last year. So we had to cut 2 teachers at the elementary level. So at the East Fairhaven School, we lost a 2nd grade teacher. And at the Wood School, we lost a 4th grade teacher. In addition to that, we had to cut a special education program over at the Wood School. And that program is for K-2 special education students who are struggling with behaviors and trying to integrate back into sort of a traditional education. And in doing that, we had to apply to the state for a waiver. And that waiver was not something they blessed easily. They basically said, Fairhaven needs to work to get their act together and fund that. So I just want to really say that the goal of the override, the part that's for the schools, really would do 3 things. 1, it would bring back the special education program that's been cut and allow us to help our students in district and not end up having to spend more money out of district later. That comes at a tremendous cost. The second thing that it does is replace the 2 classroom teachers. So the 2nd grade will now be next year a 3rd grade teacher, and the next year 5th grade at Wood School. So it would replace those 2 positions. And what it would also do is allow us to not have to consolidate the preschool. So those are the 3 key components that this override will allow us to do. Bring back the level of staffing that we had, but also create a really, people have been using the word buffer, but in addition to the cuts that we took, it created a dynamic where we're closer to meeting net school spending than ever before. And as a result of that, I think what some people have dubbed a buffer, it really is meant to say that we were already so close that it's scary close, where the state essentially can assign the dollars you don't meet your net school spending and force you to put it toward education the following year. Now, I initially said to the school committee, well, then I don't know. I'll put my hands up, let it happen, and we'll just be forced to be funded. This is an opportunity to get in front of that and have us determine that we want to keep education funded properly. Again, we're not over net school spending like a lot of other places are. We're just over by about 2 to 5%, depending on the year. So the chart that's up right now is actually just the South Coast towns and what they spend on net school spending. It's a percentage over. You'll see that Fairhaven hovers in the 2 to 5% range over. Neighboring districts, more than quadruple in some cases the amount over net school spending that we spend. We do a great job with the funding that we get. We work really efficiently. We've worked to actually reduce some of our programs in different ways to make them more efficient. At the same time, we're at a breaking point. And that breaking point is when we had to get rid of that special ed program, as well as reducing those 2 teachers. That really created a breaking point, in my opinion. You're looking at a town that wants to try to bring in more business and more families. And I think it's important that they continue to see the Fairhaven Public Schools as the premier educational option in the South Coast. In addition to that, this is similar districts by wealth factor. So there was some, feedback that what we were sharing regionally wasn't fair. So we did do wealth factor, and it actually made us look worse. So I'd rather not really focus on that. But they actually look at your town wealth, how much people make, and so forth, and determine what your factor should be. And when you compare us to those other communities, we are still low. So I think those 2 charts alone really speak to the fact that we're not making this up.
Right.
Literally every single year we have an audit. That audit determines whether or not, how much you're meeting net school spending, how much you're not. We've been fortunate to stay above it. We've wiggled close to it once before. I'm afraid we're going to wiggle close to it for the fiscal year that we're in. We've been talking about that. So for FY27, the number that's been recommended by you, and we appreciate that, helps us keep the services we have today.
Right.
But it doesn't restore the services we lost. And this year, if we were not to meet net school spending or stay just a slight bit above it, it's not something that you really catch up on ever.
Right.
So I just want to say that we're at a really pivotal point. As you know, our agreement with Acushnet is expiring at the end of this year. Our 8th grade students from Acushnet who have already signed up and are joining us are already coming. Those projections are in your town revenue report, and we expect them to stay stable. That being said, moving forward, if we don't get a subsequent agreement, they will be reduced for sure.
No question. And I'm fortunately, I'm one of the ones who used the term buffer and was corrected pretty quickly by a member of the public. And really, from dumbing it down to my level, frankly, we've got about I think a $26.5 million budget that's in the Article 8, which is the operating budget for the school department, for the Fairhaven School Department. The $481,000 that's in the Article 9, which is the override warrant article, provides a total of $500,000 over net school spending, which allows the school department to plan and budget for a $27 million budget, knowing that during the year there are going to be a variety of things, people leaving unexpectedly, people changing in health insurance plans, increases in transportation costs that don't go towards net school spending, but goes towards your appropriation amount.
Correct.
So that $500,000 really just allows, in my mind, the school department to properly plan to operate their department and the school department by as efficiently and effectively as possible. And to your point earlier, not risking dropping below net school spending when the audit's been completed at the end of the fiscal year. And DESE coming back to us and saying, "Oh, by the way, you've got to fund the deficit or the amount that you didn't meet net school spending in the next fiscal year." And one of the things that I've heard during some of the finance committee meetings, which is concerning, frankly, to me, is if net school spending drops to, or the town appropriation drops to somewhere between 95 and 100% of the net school spending number, there's no penalty. Well, I guess it depends on what you're defining as a penalty. From my point of view, having to react, to your point, to DESE saying, well, you were $100,000, $500,000 under net school spending in 27, there's not a penalty for that, but you've got to raise that money that you were short for net school spending from the previous fiscal year in the upcoming fiscal year. And one of the challenges, as I think everybody's aware in Fairhaven, is fiscal 28's budget isn't any more attractive financially than fiscal 27's has been. So to require the community to have to raise some of fiscal 26's shortfall in fiscal 28's budget just puts that much of more of a financial challenge with what's going on. So from my point of view, we all may not be thrilled with the amount of money we've got to raise to meet net school spending, but that's the threshold, and we really have to make sure we do that, because trying to attract families and businesses into Fairhaven, one of the things that I know I looked at when I had young kids and were looking to buy a new home was what type of school system does the community have and what's their reputation. And some of the two slides you put together, unfortunately, does not showcase Fairhaven in a very positive light as far as funding versus some of our neighboring communities on the South Coast. Fortunately for Fairhaven, the reputation of the Fairhaven School Department is so strong and so stellar that people, I think, have a lot of trust in the programs and the philosophies that the school department has, and they do such a great job at educating the kids. So, that's really the challenge to me, in our override number. We understand and sympathize with everybody that, yes, we're asking for some additional funds, and I know money's tight, whether it be because of other town costs or utility costs, and gasoline's now $4 a gallon, and we understand that. But making sure that the community stays competitive with the communities around us is critical to not having Fairhaven fall into a more financially challenging position than it's in now.
Yeah, and I think where Fairhaven has fallen as a community is who we are as a community has always been. We value education, we care about people, we care about each other. I appreciate people's concern about money. We all share it.
Sure.
I think that what I want to say is that in spite of the challenging funds, we've always had a lot of people who work here who care about this community, who care about giving back to it. This community has always been about valuing each other and really celebrating what we have. We just walking up to have this session encountered two people from the general public who were just walking through the town hall to see the beauty that it has. And they were saying how lucky everybody is to work and live here. And I thought to myself, what an ironic time for them to encounter Mr. Hickey and I, because, we're coming up to talk about trying to keep the heart of our community still at play. And what does that mean? I think the more when things get tight, we tend to point fingers at each other. And I think the messaging we need to be talking about as a town. So if anybody's watching this and feels compelled to share it at a coffee house or, at the family gathering, just we're trying to keep the heart of who we are. And I think Mr. Hickey's done a really great job at trying to manage and make those decisions as hard as they are. No one wants to lose the animal shelter. No one wants to cut the 2 teachers we cut and the program we cut or put preschool together. No one wants to cut, the tourism director. Like, these are things that we all want to continue to celebrate. It makes Fairhaven unique. So what I would just say to people is, please take a look at the calculator and figure out what the difference really is. I said to someone, our taxes go up every single year, right? And none of us like that.
No.
But the difference we're talking about to retain all of these things that keeps the heart of our community still present. In my case, I played with the numbers. I'm like, okay, this might be really, my husband shouldn't watch this, but a Target run, right? It might be a cup of coffee every week. So depending on your household, I just ask that you consider looking at what that difference truly means for your home, what that truly means for your evaluation. And I just implore you to consider, is there a way to help contribute to it? And if there is, vote yes and try to support this, because we're at a tipping point. And as Mr. Hickey said, it's not going to get better from here. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but I think in addition to the shortfalls that might happen moving forward, there are other challenges that we're all going to face, right? So again, if we lose the Acushnet agreement, we're still in the middle of negotiating that. Right now, that brings in $2 million in revenue to the town to help balance the budget. So if we lose them, and one of the main reasons we're losing them or may lose them is because they see a neighboring community spending more on their schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I pushed back and shared everything we do in spite of the lack of funds. I want to make sure that the conversation about lack of funding doesn't equate to a lack of a good education.
And again, I think, some of the comments we've heard, are we using our funding as efficiently and effectively as possible? And just, listening to some of the accomplishments that the school department has earned, I would like to think makes people feel a little bit more comfortable that in fact is happening. Again, we hope that people have the opportunity to take a look at some of the information. All this information that we're talking about now is on the town website. Superintendent Kohler made a point that I just want to try to emphasize. One of the things that's on our website is a tax calculator, and what that does is it allows you to put the assessed value of your own home in, and it will generate what your tax bill for fiscal 26 was, what your fiscal 27 tax bill will be if the budget's approved as it's presented, and what your tax bill would be if the budget's approved and the override's approved, and show what the difference and the increase for just the override is. Again, trying to be as transparent as we can be, trying to provide as much information as you can, because everybody's got different reasons for voting yes or no. We get that. But we want you to be able to understand and appreciate, what the financial impact is going to be if you're able to vote one way or another for our budget. So with that, I want to thank Superintendent Kohler for spending some time and trying to explain what we're proposing in both the operating budget, Article 8, and the override budget article in Article 9. Article 9 is a separate article that supplements the operating budget for fiscal 27. As I mentioned briefly earlier in this presentation, we have a number of different departments that are in this article, and it was determined to do it this way so people understand what is being lost for services if the override article fails. There are public safety salaries or overtime amounts that if those aren't funded, there'll be reductions in community service, reductions in some of the events that go on where you have a police officer being funded, say at the homecoming event, where we'll have to charge the homecoming group to have police officers doing details there. We talked briefly about the animal control closing. So what's proposed in the Article 8 is a part-time animal control officer being reduced from full-time. If the override article passes, the animal control officer will remain at full-time, and the animal shelter will remain open. The no override budget closes the animal shelter, and we have options with a couple of other communities to have them take the animals that are now going to the Fairhaven shelter. Not a situation we're happy about or pleased with, but unfortunately, with the funding challenges that we have, this is one of the departments that had to be impacted. We also have the elimination of the tourism department completely. Our tourism department supplements some of the events that go on to highlight and showcase what's going on in Fairhaven. And I know, in speaking to the director, she has an amazing forward-thinking view of what we can do with some of the resources we have in Fairhaven to attract people here to spend their money in our restaurants and our gift shops and some of the retail locations we have in town, and just take advantage of Fairhaven and the benefits that it has. And then lastly, again, there's an amount in there as well for the Fairhaven School Department. So your total override is $760,149. The reason it's kind of an odd number is I brought forward an override amount that I was comfortable and could justify for fiscal 27. In all likelihood, there'll be another override article in fiscal 28. Typically, if you go to a finance session where they're teaching an override, they'd suggest that you provide an override for 2 or 3 years worth of funding needs. And I just felt it wasn't comfortable bringing that forward in fiscal 27 because I just feel like as a community, we haven't done as good a job as we could have done in the past on a variety of things, and we need to build up the trust of the people in this community moving forward as an organization. And I'm hoping in the next year we do that. So I've asked for funding for an override for 1 fiscal year. we're hoping that you support that. And what will happen, again, the process for the override, it'll be considered a town meeting on May 2nd. If it were to pass town meeting by a simple majority, it then goes on a ballot at the town elections, which happens on June 9th. If it passes June 9th, then the override is approved and funded, and the departments that I just mentioned will receive the additional funding that's been proposed in the override. So again, all this information is on our website, as well as the calculator to determine how much your individual property will be impacted by 27's budget, as well as the potential override. Again, as I've said before, if anybody has questions, I urge you to watch or reach out, go to the website, reach out to my office or to the accounting office. If you have questions about the schools, the superintendent will be happy to answer those questions. We just want to try to make people as educated as you can on the decisions you've got to make coming up the next 6 weeks or so. It's going to be really important for the future of the community. So I want to thank again Superintendent Kohler for joining me today, and thank everybody for watching. Hope you have a great day.